Hello, it's me, GameHang21, and today we're going to be watching a new video from the Harman Smith himself. Yeah, I know, I've been going on a sort of Reforged gaming kick and stuff like that, but I call out a ton of people on his channel. And Harman Smith is no more less of a person that I tend to call out because, well, if he didn't have any so bad takes, he wouldn't be so easy to talk about. But in this context, he was talking about Baldur's Gate. Not Baldur's Gate 3, even though that's what he was going to try to talk about, but regular Baldur's Gate. Quite interesting. So let's get into this video and rip his buttocks a new one.
In order to better understand Baldur's Gate 3, I decided to take it upon myself to play Baldur's Gate, but I didn't waste $60 playing the new game on my brand new shiny gaming PC. No, I decided it was time to go retro. It was time to go back to the classics. It was time to understand what Baldur's Gate is. So I went ahead and popped in Baldur's Gate 1 on my Nintendo Switch. I had it sitting around. I bought a handful of these D&D games. I owned Neverwinter Nights. I owned Planescape Torment. I owned this, right? I bought a bunch of these games. I never really played any of them. So I popped in Baldur's Gate 1. I played it on stream, and I was bored within a couple of minutes. It is slow. It is boring. It is not all that well written. The character art is bad. The combat is non-essential. The plot doesn't really amount to anything. The game is outdated. There are better RPGs, particularly from Japanese developers, that came before this, right? And
I find it funny how he decides that to understand Baldur's Gate, he is going to go back to Baldur's Gate 1, which was released around, at least on Steam, from what I remember researching, 2013. Unsure if that was when it was actually released. Please correct me in the comments if I got that wrong. But it looks like it's from the 80s. Because it's more pixel arty than anything else. So yeah, there is definitely a significant amount of difference. So I don't think 2013 is the official release. Unsure. If it is, I stand corrected. If not, again, I am not sure. Sometimes games get re-released on Steam and they say the wrong date of when they were released because that's the date that they released on Steam. So regardless, what's more important here is the fact that Baldur's Gate 1 was released under a different studio, was released at a different time, about, again, 10 years ago, considering the amount that has transcribed in just the decade that it was released on Steam, right? So in 10 years, we went from more of an isometric-styled Fallout thing, and I think that I don't know, again, I could be completely wrong because it looks like it was made more in Fallout. It's like the thing that he's doing is basically comparing the Fallout 1 and saying that it sucks, right? And he doesn't understand why people like Fallout 4. Do you get what I'm saying there? Like it's the same sort of energy where you're comparing the first game made a long ass time ago, which a decade is a pretty long time, even if it wasn't officially the first release date. But you're comparing that one, made by a completely separate studio, by the way. It also had a completely separate publisher. I think they self-published the game. But it was made by a separate studio, made under a different engine, under a different type of vision, right? And yet you're going to compare that to the modern-day Baldur's Gate 3. That's wild. So, anyway. Also had to throw in that Japanese developers there because obviously he's a PlayStation fan. PlayStation? I got PlayStation fanboys on the brain. He's a Nintendo fanboy, so obviously he has to have the superior thing of the gender. Fucking, I'm getting my shit mixed up. He's a Nintendo fanboy who clearly has it shown. Anyway, moving on.
I really have to wonder just how exactly so many of these D&D games got made, how they got the pedigree and the respect they received over the years. And I imagine, much like every other Western video game franchise in existence, Western gamers simply don't understand that the Japanese equivalents are superior. There are better RPGs like this on Japanese gaming platforms, right? There are there is a long history of better stuff, better war stories, better turn-based RPGs, better made games in general with better visuals, more exploration, more content. Endless amounts of replayability and fun, right? Real sequels like.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Like Baldur's Gate, and I suppose every other like CRPG, they rely entirely on the D&D brand name. Like, oh man, like if you just use your imagination, you can just pretend as if you're an interesting character. You can just pretend as if this setting in the world matters to you. You can just pretend that it's not completely generic and uninspired. You can just pretend that you're actually fighting when you roll the dice. Like, you can just pretend that like this is happening and that this is a big deal. You can just pretend that this is a good video game that deserves the praise, attention, and hype that it has gotten over the years. Like much like every other PC game in existence, including stuff like StarCraft, including stuff like World of Warcraft, including like everything else that comes out. Like, it really does feel as if PC gamers don't understand how good Nintendo fans have it. They don't understand how much better our stuff is, and as a result, they don't respect it, right? Do
you like that interesting weird leap in logic that he had right there? Because he just said two different things in the same sentence. I'm not sure if you caught that. Let me be clear here. When he made the jump from tabletop games like D&D and said that it's the same thing for gaming, no. Just straight up, no. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. That's dumb. Okay? To be very clear here, one of the biggest things as to why that is dumb is for the sheer fact that tabletop RPGs and regular-ass video games are two separate forms of interactive media with very different rule sets and very different ways of development. One is literally pencil and paper that you can make up on-the-fly rules to fix certain aspects of it. I mean, I'm in a D&D game right now, and we just made some guns in there. And holy crap, is that fun. And yeah, certainly, you are playing pretend in tabletop RPGs. I'm not going to deny that. But if you think about it, you're doing the same thing, i.e. you're playing pretend with video games. You're just doing it through a different medium. Let me explain here. To keep it simple, when you play a video game and you take that same argument that he used against tabletop RPGs, where it's like you're pretending to care, you're pretending to go into these worlds and stuff, you're pretending to do that. Yes, for both video games and tabletop RPGs, it's not that you're diluting yourself to say, oh, or like bringing yourself down to a lesser person, I guess is his point here, to say that these games are fun and that I'm actually invested in my character's, like, mindset. And yeah, who doesn't want to be the hero of their own story? Which is what these games do. All these games kind of do that, if you think about it, like, bring it down to its simplest format. So what the hell? I don't get it. Makes very little sense to me.
Don't understand the just how much more advanced Japanese RPGs are. They don't understand what we Nintendo fans were getting around the same time. They don't understand that like Baldur's Gate like is entirely built on a lie, right? Like that it's this great RPG, like nothing else like it. The true successor to Ultima, which was replaced by Dragon Quest, like the true successor to like the original CRPGs, right? Like it's appalling, like seeing Baldur's Gate 3 and seeing people just laugh that shit up because they have nothing else, right? They have nothing else to talk about this year. It just really makes me feel sad for people who grew up on gaming PCs, who genuinely think this stuff is good. who genuinely like have no idea like what's actually out there, who have no real life experiences, who have never played sports or like gone for a bike ride or gone kayaking or like held hands with a girl. That is the typical PC gaming audience, right?
Excuse me? Mr. Kettle, Mr. Pot called. He says you're black!
That's the kind of person who thinks Baldur's Gate is a particularly well-made, interesting, or fun video game. That is the situation we find ourselves in. That people just like don't have enough life experience to realize that like stuff like Baldur's Gate, stuff like D&D just isn't all that fun, right? People just need to accept this, right? Like that if you revolve your life around D&D, if like you name your dogs like Thaco or whatever, if you like you know build your entire online presence on like a D&D character you came up with when you're a kid, you know, oh, I'll be Spoony the Bard, like.
Yeah, I know. I'm confused too as to why some people would actually want to base their lives around something that they hold near and dear to their heart. Something that they actually created because they made it in through life experiences and how they have a very fond and interesting nostalgic memories of that. And yeah, certainly it might be sad looking to some people, but to that one person it brings them happiness. It brings them more happiness than you could possibly know. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean that that person, you know, isn't experiencing or living their best life.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
I just wish that you understand that that's a complete and utter sarcastic take, and that's meant to kind of reflect on you if that joke was not, like, very, very, very evident at this point. Because you do not have, like, you think that you're giving this big philosophical debate when you're not. You're just talking out of your ass right here. Because, yeah, certainly, that Spoony the Bard to you might just be numbers on a sheet of paper, but to that person, they have stories with that. They have things with that. Same thing with video games. Like, again, that to most people, video games seems to be a waste of time, and that was a thing for a long, long period of time. But for me, for someone who lives and breathes and understands video games, I have so many stories of people that I've talked to, of things that I've experienced, of throwing up for the first time, of drinking with friends in a space, of engaging in very philosophical conversations, not even just while drunk, but more recently a lot while drunk. But my point being is that you can look and downplay something to the nth degree in your mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that thing is any less important to that person. That's one of the big things that I try to make clear here. Like, I might goof, I might goff, I might yell and scream at people who are PlayStation fanboys, but it's the ideas that I attach them, that they attach themselves to, that I attack first. I don't come out here swinging my big dick around saying, oh, this person's a manlet, this person sucks balls. I try to increase and create some conversation around it. Recently got into a debate with someone on Twitter, very quick tangent, over how I gave examples of extreme fanboy beliefs, of extreme fanboy actions that have happened. Someone else shot back an example of Xbox stuff, and I'm like, okay, you gave one example. I gave 3. And they're like, oh, well, it shouldn't matter. I still gave you an example, and you're dismissing it. It's like, no, I didn't say that. I never said that I was dismissing your example. I didn't even really mention it. I just said that you did 1 and I did 3. And yeah, certainly that might be a little bit of Xena the dick measuring contest, but it goes to show you like the media skewing things in very weird ways. To be very clear though, he did give a very solid example of how, I think it was like Xbox Brazil doing something shitty, and I'm like, I can agree. That thing that they did was very shitty, and it was like something to do with sexual harassment in the workplace. 100% don't agree with that. I can see why. Just because I give that example is more of like cherry picking examples. That's what I'm saying. It's like an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind is really my point here. But move on.
Like, imagine spending like 30 years of your life, like revolving your life around this character, building yourself up, using this character in multiple campaigns, using this character like in a entirely new like in every D&D game you get your hands on. Like, imagine just being that person who never understands that, like, maybe other people can come up with more interesting characters than you can. The iconic Spoonie the Bard is just a knockoff of Edward, a C-string character from Final Fantasy IV, right? Like, there is no respect for, like, the creativity of Japanese RPGs. There is no acknowledgement that these games are better. Like, people only worship Baldur's Gate. They only worship these games because it's D&D. Like, they have nothing else in their lives. They have no ability to, like, comprehend or understand anything that isn't like loosely inspired by D&D and some.
I find this argument very weird here because he says the whole thing with Spoonie the Bard, and I'm like, I understand that some people having one character throughout their whole thing might be a little bit odd, but saying that another person can come up with a better character for Dungeons and Dragons, no. This is clear to me that you don't play D&D, right? And yeah, absolutely, knocking off something that is popular. I make it no qualms that my personal character in my D&D campaign is a ripoff of literally Rocket Raccoon from Marvel. Like, he is a short boy that is a very firecracker of emotions, super duper serial, but hides his face behind a specific thing. It's not edgy in this context. It's more of like wholesome and kind. So I kind of twisted it in that way. The point being that you can have a character concept that you like, and you can apply that character to different things so long as the DM is okay with it. This is, and and I do have to ask, what the fuck does any of this have to do with Baldur's Gate 3 being worshipped? How does that translate? Like, explain it to me. How does that translate to people liking Baldur's Gate 3? Because you can't get behind someone else talking about Baldur's Gate 3 being a good video game? So you're attacking the D&D aspect of it, something that is only tangentially related in such a way that the main reason why is because they were able to, like, apply a lot of the game mechanics to a video game, which, to be fair, let me be clear on that. That is astonishing how they made that work. I haven't played it personally, but from the gameplay that I've seen, from the stuff that I've watched on the tube, which is very different than actually playing it, mind you. Even from the small stuff that I've seen, that's impressive. Like, to take D&D entirely and just, like, put it into a video game, I mean, come on. That's impressive. They've been trying to do that for fucking years, and these guys are like, all right, we'll just spend, like, a number of years, we'll work on this one game, we'll do it, and I'm like, they did it, they fought it. I have no words. And yeah, certainly, I'm talking about a game that I will probably never play in my lifetime because I personally just don't care for that sort of game. But maybe I might. But it should go to show you just how invested people are in that. Because some people that do this don't even play Dungeons and Dragons. That's the weird part. Some people just might like a really good feature-complete game, which is what Baldur's Gate was.
Right? These people have deluded themselves into thinking that Tolkien, like, invented fantasy, right? That this is the only fantasy game worth playing, all right? This is the only thing worth talking about or being excited for or enjoying, right? That is the Baldur's Gate audience. That is the CRPG audience. That is the PC gaming audience in general. The vegans of gaming, right? People who revolve their lives around trying to convince you that their lifestyle is superior to yours. That is the situation we find ourselves in right now. That is what I thought playing Baldur's Gate is, that this is not a game I would ever have even considered playing if it wasn't.
I find it funny how he says that PC people are the vegans of gaming, when, in all honesty, I wouldn't say that we are. I would say that we tout it a lot. I would say that I tout it a lot. I tout it as a badge of honor. If someone says, oh, you're a PC cuck, it's like, thank you. I actually prefer choosing my options and stuff like that. Yeah, I spent $2,000 on this gaming PC. What of it? It's still going to be coming with me whenever I move out of this house. It's still going to be with me for the next 5 to 10 years when I decide to do something. It's going to probably be making me money if this video is anything to go off of. It's like saying that someone who gives you more options to live your life and to not be bogged down by an industry that's actively crushing you, I guess that kind of can sound veganism. But I would argue, coming from a Nintendo fanboy, that vegan thing kind of actually applies more to them. Because, let me be clear here, while I personally don't like veganism, I am an omnivore. I like all kinds of things. I like meat. All right, meat is delicious. I can't say anything else. But I do enjoy certain vegan type options. I don't like salad personally, but they had the Impossible Whopper at Burger King. So I'd like to get that whenever I get to Burger King. It's literally the only thing that I get at Burger King. So that should tell you how good that shit is. To be fair, one of, if not the biggest things with vegans is their adamancy that they are correct, and with very little evidence to go off of. You hear me? There might be some evidence that living a vegan lifestyle can be beneficial, but if you look at it objectively, there is a lot of problems with it that the vegans just don't address. They're more about trying to, quote, save the animals, right? When in actuality, they just want to push this agenda onto a person. Now, I'm not going to get too much more into it than that, but I feel like every console fanboy, every extreme console fanboy, mind you, tries to push that narrative, right? Where they have less evidence, but they try to convince you with more stuff. Whereas with someone like me, I can provide a lot of evidence, and I can show you all of the options and things. And I can tell you how much freedom and how much emulation and how much other stuff I can provide for you. But these guys just won't listen to that. Now, this video is getting pretty long already, so I think I'll cut it here because I don't want to go too long. And there's another minute of this video, and I think I'm going to cut it off there because he's just probably going to repeat his point. Overall, the conclusion of this video is he tries to use a previous game made by, I think, a different developer on a different engine that was made in a different time over a decade ago, and saying that it sucks because of this one game that was an underground success, that it got 2 sequels. You gotta understand, it had 2 sequels for a reason, because it struck a chord with people, right? And yeah, a lot of D&D games do kind of suck. I'm not going to deny that. There is some D&D games out there that suck massive donkey balls. But when you apply it correctly by understanding the fundamentals of what D&D is, which is a lot of what Baldur's Gate seems to be doing, and from what I've been told, it's actually doing that from some people who are more D&D experts than I, right? When it creates the essence of fun within a weird-ass fantasy-type world, regardless of who makes it or what comes of it, why the fuck are you complaining? Is it because it's not made by Nintendo or not ported to Nintendo? Is that why? Is it only because Nintendo didn't make this game that has some of the best forms that people are praising and stuff, and that with your blind faith to Nintendo, you can only really lash out in such a way that's just this? I don't know. Kind of seems weird to me. In all honesty, I think that'll about do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, if you are still around to see this whole little bit of the video. If you like what it is that I do, links down to everything in the description below. Patreon, Gumroad, stuff that you can do to support me monetarily. Totally not necessary, but it's very helpful. So my name is GamePango21. Harman, you are a riot as always, and a peace. Oh.